Officer Michael Calhoun's face drained of color as District Attorney Victoria Bennett's name flashed on his cell phone. 20 minutes ago, he'd handcuffed her twin daughters on the sidewalk, ignoring their pleas and mocking their lies about their identity. Now, his 18-year career was hanging by a thread. Before we dive into this powerful story about prejudice, accountability, and transformation, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you've ever witnessed or experienced racial profiling, hit that like button to show solidarity with those affected by this ongoing issue. Don't forget to subscribe for more thought-provoking stories that shine a light on social justice issues in our communities. Now, let's rewind and see exactly how Officer Calhoun's misguided assumptions led to a moment that would forever change multiple lives and an entire police department. Officer Michael Calhoun adjusted his sunglasses against the bright spring sunshine as he guided his patrol car through the tree-lined streets of Hillrest, the wealthiest neighborhood in Oakwood. The 42-year-old veteran cop had transferred to this precinct just 6 months ago after 15 years working in the city's rougher eastern districts, and he still hadn't fully adjusted to the manicured lawns and sprawling estates that made up his new beat. The pristine sidewalks and carefully maintained flower beds felt almost foreign after years of patrolling areas with boarded-up storefronts and crumbling infrastructure. Still, Calhoun took pride in his role keeping Hillrest safe, which, in his mind, primarily meant ensuring that people who didn't belong were promptly questioned and removed if they couldn't provide a satisfactory reason for their presence. As he cruised past Westridge Academy, an exclusive private school where annual tuition exceeded $30,000, Calhoun noticed two black teenage girls walking along the sidewalk. They wore the school's distinctive navy blue and gold uniforms, pleated skirts, blazers with embroidered crests, and polished shoes that marked them as students of the prestigious institution. Jasmine and Zoe Bennett, 16-year-old identical twins with neatly braided hair pulled back into matching ponytails, were heading to a nearby cafe to study after debate team practice. Their animated conversation about the upcoming Model UN competition, where they would be representing France, was punctuated with laughter as they carried expensive backpacks and textbooks. Calhoun's brow furrowed as he watched them through his window. In his mind, these girls didn't match his image of Westridge students, despite their uniforms and the school's proximity. Without conscious deliberation, he made a U-turn at the next intersection and slowly followed them for a block, observing their body language and movements with the scrutiny he developed during years of proactive policing in the Ahim in the Mine, high-crime areas. His suspicion, formed without evidence but rooted in deeply held biases, led him to pull alongside the girls and roll down his passenger window. "You two stop right there," he called out in the authoritative tone he'd perfected over years of police work. The girls paused mid-conversation, startled by the command. Their expressions shifted quickly from confusion to weariness as they exchanged a knowing glance that communicated volumes between them. This wasn't the first time they'd been profiled, and they both recognized what was happening. Calhoun parked his patrol car and stepped out, his right hand resting near his weapon in a stance that projected authority but also implied potential threat. "I'm going to need some identification and an explanation for why you're in this neighborhood," he stated firmly, approaching the girls with the cautious posture he'd use when confronting potential criminal suspects. The twins maintained perfect composure despite the immediate tension of the situation. "We're Westridge students heading to Bloom Cafe to study, officer," Jasmine explained politely, her voice steady as she reached slowly for the student ID in her blazer pocket. Calhoun immediately tensed at her movement, his hand shifting closer to his weapon. "Freeze," he ordered sharply, his voice escalating to a volume that attracted attention from people walking nearby. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Jasmine immediately complied, raising both hands slightly while explaining, "I was just reaching for my school ID, sir." After directing her to retrieve it with exaggerated caution, Calhoun examined both twins' student identification cards with obvious skepticism, turning them over and holding them up to the light as if searching for signs of forgery. despite the school's distinctive holographic seal and matching photos. "Girls like you don't go to Westridge," he said dismissively as he handed the cards back, the implication of his words unmistakable. Zoe, slightly more outspoken than her sister, raised an eyebrow. "What exactly do you mean by girls like us, officer?" she asked directly, challenging his assumption while maintaining a respectful tone. Her question clearly agitated Calhoun, whose expression hardened. "Just sit down on the curb while I verify your story," he ordered, gesturing to the sidewalk's edge as if directing criminals at a crime scene. The confrontation had attracted attention, with several passers-by slowing to observe the interaction. Among them were Westridge parents who recognized the Bennett twins but hesitated to intervene, uncomfortable challenging police authority even when witnessing potential misconduct. Calhoun called in the girls' names for verification, informing dispatch he was investigating possible truancy and trespassing despite their school uniforms and identification. When Zoe attempted to call their parents as the situation escalated, Calhoun immediately confiscated both their phones, claiming he needed to secure them as potential evidence, a justification with no basis in actual police procedure. Throughout this escalating situation, the Bennett twins remained remarkably composed, having been carefully instructed by their parents about exactly these scenarios. Their dignified responses and articulate questioning of Calhoun's actions seemed to further agitate the officer, who appeared increasingly determined to assert his authority. "My mother is District Attorney Victoria Bennett," Jasmine informed him, calmly as he continued questioning them about their real reason for being in Hillrest. Calhoun laughed dismissively at this claim, his disbelief obvious. "Sure, and my dad's the president," he mocked, clearly considering this a desperate lie from teenagers attempting to evade consequences. Despite growing protests from bystanders, including a West Ridge teacher who recognized the twins and attempted to confirm their identities, Calhoun proceeded to handcuff both girls, citing obstruction and providing false information to a peace officer. His body camera recorded the entire interaction, every dismissive comment, every unfounded accusation, and every composed, articulate response from the teenagers that contradicted his assumptions about them. The mounting evidence that he was making a serious error seemed invisible to him as he focused solely on confirming his initial suspicions. His radio crackled repeatedly with requests from dispatch to verify his actions before proceeding, calls he deliberately ignored as he requested a patrol car to transport the girls to the station. The situation had fully escalated when Calhoun's phone rang with his sergeant's direct number. He initially ignored the call, but when it immediately rang again, he reluctantly answered. His expression transformed from confident authority to shocked realization as he listened to the voice on the other end, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. Sergeant Patricia Rodriguez's voice came through Calhoun's phone with unmistakable urgency. "Mike, verify who you've detained immediately, now." The unusual tension in her normally unflappable supervisor's tone cut through Calhoun's certainty like a knife through butter. He stepped away from the handcuffed twins, turning his back as if this physical distance might somehow shield them from hearing the conversation about to unfold. "Just some truant kids claiming to be Westridge students," he responded with lingering confidence, his voice lowered but still audible to those nearby. "Caught them trespassing in Hillrest. They got fake IDs and—" Rodriguez cut him off mid-sentence. "Those are District Attorney Bennett's daughters, you idiot. Release them immediately. The DA is already on your way to your location." The words hit Calhoun like a physical blow, his world tilting as he processed this information. He turned slowly to look at the twins with new eyes, suddenly seeing their composed demeanor not as defiance, but the confidence of young women who knew exactly who they were and what rights they possessed. His mind raced through the interaction, recalling every dismissive comment, every baseless assumption he'd made, all captured on his body camera for inevitable review. The mounting evidence that he was making a serious error seemed invisible to him as he focused solely on confirming his initial suspicions. His radio crackled repeatedly with requests from dispatch to verify his actions before proceeding, calls he deliberately ignored as he requested a patrol car to transport the girls to the station. The situation had fully escalated when Calhoun's phone rang with his sergeant's direct number. He initially ignored the call, but when it immediately rang again, he reluctantly answered. His expression transformed from confident authority to shocked realization as he listened to the voice on the other end, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. Sergeant Patricia Rodriguez's voice came through Calhoun's phone with unmistakable urgency. "Mike, verify who you've detained immediately, now." The unusual tension in her normally unflappable supervisor's tone cut through Calhoun's certainty like a knife through butter. He stepped away from the handcuffed twins, turning his back as if this physical distance might somehow shield them from hearing the conversation about to unfold. "Just some truant kids claiming to be Westridge students," he responded with lingering confidence, his voice lowered but still audible to those nearby. "Caught them." Additionally, the message indicated that the district attorney's office was conducting its own review of possible criminal charges related to civil rights violations. His police union representative called shortly after, advising him to remain silent and let them handle his defense. "Say nothing to anyone about this. Not fellow officers, not friends, not social media," the rep instructed firmly before adding off the record, "This one's bad, Mike. The DA's office has resources and motivation we can't match. We'll do our best, but you need to prepare for the worst." As Calhoun processed these developments, the doorbell rang, revealing an unexpected visitor. Pastor Marcus Green from Oakwood Community Church, where Calhoun occasionally attended with his family. The middle-aged black minister stood on the porch with a concerned expression rather than the condemnation Calhoun had come to expect from everyone outside his immediate family. "Thought you might need someone to talk to," Pastor Green said simply when invited inside. Their conversation in Calhoun's kitchen avoided both empty reassurances and harsh judgment. Instead, the pastor asked Calhoun a question that would linger long after the visit. "Do you want to defend what you did, or do you want to understand why you did it?" This gentle but direct challenge became a turning point, as Pastor Green encouraged Calhoun to examine the underlying beliefs that had led to his actions. "You're not the first officer to make this mistake, and you won't be the last if nothing changes," he said, his tone compassionate but unflinching. But change starts with honest reflection, not just damage control. Meanwhile, at West Ridge Academy, Jasmine and Zoe returned to school to find themselves suddenly at the center of attention. Some teachers and students expressed genuine support and outrage at their treatment, while others displayed uncomfortable curiosity or performative allyship that felt almost as dehumanizing as the original incident. The school administration, concerned primarily about their reputation, offered platitudes about inclusivity while subtly pressuring the twins to handle the situation discreetly. This pressure intensified when the girls were called to Headmaster William Prescott's office during third period, where they found their parents already waiting. The headmaster, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetually concerned expression, sat behind his massive desk as he expressed rehearsed concern about the incident before hinting that the publicity was disruptive to the Pfizer educational environment. Victoria immediately recognized this attempt to silence her daughters and responded with measured precision. "My daughters were racially profiled in their school uniforms a block from campus. If that's not relevant to their educational environment, I don't know what is." Her calm but firm response left the headmaster backpedaling, suddenly emphasizing the school's full support for the Bennett family. Have you ever witnessed someone in authority try to minimize discrimination instead of addressing it directly? Comment number 1. If you believe institutions often care more about their image than actually protecting the people they serve, hit that like button if you admire Victoria's refusal to let her daughters be silenced for the sake of institutional comfort. Subscribe to follow this powerful story of accountability and systemic change. What do you think will happen to Officer Calhoun now that his actions have been exposed? Will the police department take meaningful action, or will they try to protect their own at the expense of justice? And how will this incident affect the Bennett twins as they navigate the sudden spotlight thrust upon them? Stay tuned as our story continues with the internal investigation that will reveal just how deep the problems go in the Oakwood Police Department. As evening approached on this tumultuous day, the story shifts between three perspectives that establish the far-reaching impact of a single police encounter. Calhoun sitting alone in his home office, surrounded by commendations and photos from his police career, wondering how it all went so wrong so quickly. Victoria Bennett in her downtown office, methodically building a case that extends beyond one incident to address systemic issues throughout the department. And the twins in their bedroom creating a thoughtful social media post that articulates their experience and calls for accountability rather than merely punishment. These parallel moments establish that the incident's repercussions are just beginning to unfold for everyone involved, with consequences that will extend far beyond one officer's career or one family's experience to potentially transform an entire community's approach to policing and racial justice. 1 week after the incident, Calhoun sat across from Internal Affairs Captain Washington in a sterile conference room at police headquarters, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the table between them. Unlike the aggressive interrogation Calhoun had expected based on his experiences on the other side of such investigations, Washington's approach was methodical and factual, making the evidence against him all the more damning through its objective presentation. "I'm going to play your body camera footage in its entirety," Washington explained, his expression professionally neutral, as he opened a laptop. "I want you to watch it without commentary first, then we'll discuss specific moments." What followed was excruciating for Calhoun, seeing his behavior without the filter of his own perceptions, the footage revealing subtle details he hadn't registered in the moment, how he approached the twins with his hand near his sprayed weapon despite no indication of threat, how he interrupted them repeatedly while they tried to explain, how his tone changed when speaking to white bystanders who attempted to intervene, how he dismissed clear evidence contradicting his assumptions. Washington paused the video. At the moment, Calhoun claimed the twins' school IDs must be fake. "Walk me through your thought process here," he requested, his tone conversational but penetrating. Calhoun shifted uncomfortably in his chair, struggling to articulate what had seemed so obvious to him in the moment. "They just didn't look like Westridge students," he finally admitted, immediately recognizing how damning the statement sounded. "I mean, the uniform seemed real, but I thought maybe they'd acquired them somehow." Or he trailed off, unable to complete the thought without revealing the underlying assumption that he couldn't believe Black teenagers from this neighborhood could afford such an exclusive school. Washington nodded slightly, allowing the uncomfortable silence to stretch before continuing. "So you assumed they couldn't be students there based on what, exactly?" The pointed question forced Calhoun to confront his biases directly. After several false starts, he finally acknowledged, "I guess I assumed they couldn't afford the school, that they didn't belong in that neighborhood." Washington then presented data from Calhoun's patrol history that he hadn't known was being compiled. He had stopped Black pedestrians at 8 times the rate of white pedestrians in Hillcrest, despite the neighborhood's demographics. Similar patterns emerged in vehicle stops and suspicious person reports. Calhoun had never seen these statistics analyzed and appeared genuinely shocked, attempting to justify the pattern with references to criminal profiles and instinct developed over years of policing in high-crime areas. "Is it possible," Washington asked carefully, "that your instinct has been shaped by biases you haven't examined?" This question hung in the air between them, its implications extending beyond this single incident to Calhoun's entire approach to policing. Before he could formulate a response, Washington introduced additional evidence: 5 previous complaints of racial profiling against Calhoun from his former precinct, all dismissed without thorough investigation. The pattern was undeniable, especially when contrasted with his record of rarely stopping white civilians for similar minor infractions or perceived suspicious behavior. This isn't just about the Bennett twins, Washington concluded as the interview wound down. It's about a pattern of behavior that the department can no longer ignore, regardless of what happens with this specific case. Across town, Victoria Bennett met with her investigative team in the conference room of her office, the walls covered with whiteboards documenting not just Calhoun's history, but departmental data showing disparate treatment of minorities throughout Oakwood's police force. Civil rights attorney Ayanna Jackson, whom Victoria had brought in specifically for this case, reviewed the materials with practice efficiency. Calhoun's pattern is concerning, she noted, but what's more troubling is how the department handled previous complaints. The system protected him until he targeted someone who could fight back effectively. Victoria nodded in agreement, her expression broader than many expected from someone whose children had been directly affected. Calhoun isn't an anomaly, she explained to the assembled team. He's a symptom of systems that protect and perpetuate bias. I want accountability for my daughters, but I also want structural change. Otherwise, we're just addressing one officer while leaving the conditions that created him intact. Ayanna nodded in agreement, but played the devil's advocate. The police union will fight this tooth and nail. They'll claim it was an isolated incident, not a systemic problem. They're already shaping the narrative in some media outlets. Victoria smiled grimly, her expression reflecting years of experience navigating political resistance to meaningful reform. That's why we're gathering evidence that proves otherwise, and why we need to approach this strategically, not emotionally. Build a case so solid they can't dismiss it as damage control or parental outrage. Meanwhile, the Bennett twins navigated their unexpected role as symbols in a larger movement. At school, they found themselves alternately treated as heroes or victims, rarely as the normal teenagers they'd been just days earlier. During lunch period, a well-meaning white classmate approached their table with enthusiastic suggestions. "You should totally speak at the student rally next week," the girl insisted, her expression earnest. "You could use your platform to raise awareness." Zoe, typically more direct than her sister, responded firmly, "We're not your social justice project. We're still processing what happened to us." The classmate's shocked expression revealed she hadn't considered the